Arizona State just beat Iowa State and made them like it. I mean, that game was a blowout. Arizona State needed to win the game, or Iowa State, to get into the playoff, but that game was emphatic for a team that just kind of was there. No one thought much about them. I wouldn't pick against them, although they're going to have to play Texas or Clemson, but they are a team right now on a mission.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see them turn into such a Cinderella story from 15th, 16th in the Big 12 preseason poll. Were they 16th officially? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
I thought, and it was them and Houston duking it out. I couldn't remember the exact poll.
No, they
finish.
were 16th, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I said this earlier in the year. I'll say this again. I think that just had to do with just not knowing enough. Like, the only thing I really knew about them based off last year was really Cam Skattebo. And he's great, but I didn't know to base an entire team off of him and him being able to carry the weight. Well, guess what? I was wrong, because in a lot of ways he did that. Now, they also got much better at quarterback over the offseason with Sam Levitt and that pickup. And Jordan Tyson was a great receiver. The thing I was most wrong about in this game was Jordan Tyson being gone didn't matter at all for Arizona State. That had no bearing whatsoever on the outcome of this game. And so kudos to them. They got some nice contributions from Scaboo in the pass game, of course. Again, he's been a presence there throughout the year, but Guillory had a couple of big touchdown catches, and then you had some others that sprinkled in there throughout. But I really thought Tyson was going to be a much bigger loss, and it didn't really matter because they were so successful running the football. I just was blown away by how they just put the pedal down to the metal and ran right through Iowa State. That to me was the most surprising thing. I just figured that Iowa State, being a very proud defense, would respond well to a big bruising running back. Not necessarily stop him all the time, but I didn't feel like Arizona State could just run the football to win the game almost in a way. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But what happened, guys, and I should have figured this because I asked this question twice to Iowa State analysts last week about their depth issues, particularly at linebacker. And what did Arizona State do? Just slam Scatterbo into that defense that was already at linebacker, paper thin as it was, and they couldn't hold up to it. Instead of wondering, kind of like how I did last week, of how remarkable it was they overcame some of their depth issues, I probably, in hindsight, should have been staring at those same depth issues and going, that's going to be a damn problem going up against Cam Skattebo.
But not to interrupt you, to add this to your conversation, Iowa State was 100th against the run.
Yeah.
Entering the game.
Yeah, they weren't great to begin with. Yeah, but their depth issues, they've been able to sort of overcome those to get a spot into Arlington, not to be perfect by any means, but I don't know why I didn't factor that in more, rather as a feather in their cap, as that's just going to be potentially what cost them this game. And it wasn't the only thing, but it was a big part of what caused it. They just couldn't hold up against Scatterbo. And guess what? A lot of defenses can't. It'll be really interesting to see whichever one emerges from that Texas-Clemson game that has to do so in the second round, because that Texas defense, that would be a battle of those two teams, running into each other. But I was super impressed. I feel like the things are, in my mind, coming out of this of just how wrong we were on the preseason poll, because I think we're ignorant to a lot of what Arizona State brought to the table and just didn't know enough. Not enough people knowing enough about them. But after Cam Skattebo's comments, and also what a great story this was, but did we do him a disservice? Did we, as Big 12-related media, do him a disservice when it came to the Heisman Trophy and not putting him out front a bit more? And talking about him the way we talked about Travis Hunter and the way we talked about Shedeur Sanders and the way maybe other leagues talk about other guys. And I say this almost like a...
I don't know. I think there's some that didn't even know who he was.
Yeah.
That's a disservice.
Us specifically, didn't talk... But, did the media do him a bit of a disservice by not putting him out front and putting him forth as a contender a bit more than he was? Because...
For the Heisman?
Yeah.
I think so. I'm going to say it. Look... That dude is unfreaking believable. And most years, and look, he's not going to win it, and I don't think, he would have gotten the votes. But if we're talking about guys who are the best player in their conference, best player in their position at the country.
And in the Big 12 at running back, that's saying something, man. You got Devin Neal and Taj Brooks and all these guys. Yeah.
You have a stacked conference, and he was just dominant. He receives the ball really well. Is he going to get the votes over Ashton Genty? No, but he's the biggest reason that they are where they are. And he was the biggest reason that every team had to, figure out, like, do we just go out to stop him and see if this Sam Levitt guy can do anything? And they didn't lose but one game with Sam Levitt as their quarterback.
Yeah, they were 11-1 with him as starting
11-1 with him as the starting quarterback. So if he plays against Cincinnati, this is a team that has one freaking loss.
And then there's no conversation.
Yeah, there's no conversation at all.
Here's from Paxton. I didn't know who he was, honestly. I'm going to tell you this, that I did not vote until the weekend of games was over. And someone asked me, well, why don't you just vote after Boise State plays? Okay. Maybe that's what people thought, but then I wanted to see what Dylan Gabriel did at Oregon. And then I wanted to see what Skattebo was going to do. And they're like, Skattebo, they didn't even understand who I was talking about. So it was a name that not a lot of people knew about until maybe for him too late. But, I mean, the guy is as good as anybody in America.
Yeah, well, Pac-12 fans knew, and certain people who watch Pac-12 After Dark, that's where I caught him last year a lot, and he was awesome at the time, had no idea what was in store for this year. He's amazing. He probably should have gotten more love, is my point. Probably should have been promoted by the school and the conference more, honestly. And the media probably should have talked about him a bit more. So I just had that thought in my mind watching his post game and him talking about, I'm the best running back in America, and I'm not even being disrespectful or I'm shying away from, like, I am the best running back in America. And I'm like, you know what? I believe you when you say it, and you've got a real argument. Like, you've got a real argument, but Sam Levitt was a tremendous pickup. Kenny Dillingham's a great young head coach. Very cool story for them to complete this 16th ranking in the preseason to the top team in the Big 12 and a first-round bye and a playoff team. Like, that's remarkable. You just hope that the fan base and the town and all that comes with that can really rally around this momentum and take it to a different place, which is going to be part of the challenge for Kenny Dillingham. And I feel for Iowa State. That's a game where you were there just a couple years ago. You fell short against Oklahoma. I know it's more than a couple years, but you know what I'm saying. And now you're back, and you went through a lot of adversity this year, and you not only fall short, but you get obliterated when all is said and done. So that was a tough pill to swallow for the Cyclones fan base that thought, like, we finally won 10 games. Now we're going to win the Big 12 for the first time, and instead it's another big game and you basically feed ammunition to your rivals. Oh, Matt Campbell can't win the big game. Like that whole narrative pops up. So I felt for Cyclones fans, still a really productive and good year. They can still win 11 games, but Arizona State, that was a good team that definitely went out and earned it. So kudos to the Sun Devils.
I don't know where they would. I know that there's the AP Top 25, and they weren't ranked, what were they, 10th or something like that? I just know that they've been pretty much proving everybody wrong from the beginning except them. You look at the Big 12 running backs with Neal at Kansas. Gordon just had nothing.
Gordon actually had a pretty good year, all things considered. His team sucked, but he actually had a pretty okay
Taj
year.
Brooks.
Yeah.
Harvey at
RJ
UCF.
Harvey, yep.
What you saw with a 1,000-yard season from Bryson Washington at about 2/3 of the season, and I could go on. I mean, my goodness.
Okay, the only two teams that didn't have like guys that were terrifyingly scary at running back at times were Colorado, who could not run it, who doesn't run it, and they can't run it, but they're still good, and BYU, who was okay at it. It just they weren't. When I think of BYU, I think more of what Jake Retzlaff has done, kind of passing the ball and being a dual threat than any of the running backs. But even when you look at Cincinnati, when they were going along well, they had Kaiser, Kiner, and they've got those guys. Every team in the Big 12 legitimately had good running backs. In fact, Arizona's season took a dive when their running back got nicked for a weird eligibility issue.
Yeah.
So,
I'd say, and even BYU there towards the end when L.J. Martin got healthy and could finally play, he gave them a little bit of something. It wasn't to the level of Neal or Kiner or Harvey or any of these, Skattebo, obviously, Brooks, et cetera. But, yeah, he gave them a little bit of a lift. But, yeah, your point stands that
Giddens.
Everybody, of course, DJ Giddens. The league had a lot of really good running backs this year, and I know that, Joey McGuire fought for Taj Brooks in the All Big 12 snub and all of that, but it is, as like I said last week, you weren't here. I was like, I get what Joey's doing, but he was showing like career yardage, and I was like, that's not really the.
No, that's like giving Alabama a benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, so I didn't really agree with that angle he took, but I understand what he was trying to do, which was fight and promote his guy. But I said at the time, like, I totally understand it, but like, this is a really hard league to just pick 2 running backs in. And how do you not pick R.J. Harvey or Cam Skattebo? Like, I mean,
they had 1,500 yards plus, 40 touchdowns combined.
Giddens, we left Giddens.
I said it. Yeah, I know. That's okay. So here are the running backs in America who had over 1,000 yards rushing. Harvey, Scaboo, Brooks, these are from the Big 12. Giddens, Neal, Kiner, and Bryson Washington, who had 1,004 and didn't really start getting a lot of carries for the last 5 or 6 games. That's a chunk of players from the conference who ended up with over 1,000 yards. That's pretty impressive.